Everyone attending today. So I guess I'll go ahead and share my screen. Are we good with that? Natalie, all good to go? Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I'll just talk through my slides for a few minutes about teaching English abroad. And I really just want to start by telling you why you should consider this type of opportunity. So really, first and foremost, it's a very affordable option. So you really might not have a lot of upfront costs. You could be responsible for paying for your flight, but usually there's programs that really don't have a lot of other fees involved. My teaching experience, for example, the flights were included and I had housing provided, so I really didn't have any upfront costs. So it's just a really affordable option to live abroad, go abroad, work abroad. Also location variety, because you can really find opportunities on every continent, and it's an easy way to live long term in another country. It can be very difficult to get a work visa, especially if you're fresh out of school, don't have a lot of work experience. This is just a great way to live abroad. Also exploring teaching as a career, whether you have a teaching degree or not, it's just a great way to try it out. Of course, learning or improving a foreign language, experiencing a new culture in depth, and then creating that global mindset and cross-cultural skills, which are really things that will serve you for the rest of your life. And then gaining independence. I think that a lot of people that teach abroad, they might be traveling abroad for the first time, or it might be one of their first job experiences. So it definitely helps you to gain independence. All right, so I'm going to touch on my personal experience a little bit, which was in Georgia. And I know I'm speaking to a smart audience that knows geography, but for context, Georgia is a small country on the Black Sea that borders Turkey, Russia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. It was part of the Soviet Union until 1991, and Russian has been widely spoken in the country for many years, even though Georgians have their own language. A lot of people assume that their language is similar to Russian, but actually the two languages really have nothing in common, and you can see Georgian has its very own alphabet on this slide. And I was part of a program called Teach and Learn with Georgia, or TLG as we called it. The program was started in 2010 and was the idea of the president at the time, Mikhail Saakashvili. His goal was to place a native English speaker in every public school in Georgia and really make English the second language of Georgia. Since then, the program has evolved to introduce other important foreign languages into Georgian schools. Now, I could really talk about Georgia all day. I had an amazing experience there, totally fell in love with the country. So if you ever have the opportunity or a chance to visit, I definitely encourage it. The teaching aspect of it was definitely more challenging than I expected. And I'm glad that I had a co-teacher in this program instead of an entire class to myself. One of the things that made my year so special was my host family. You can see photos of them on this slide. The upper left photo is with my host parents. We were attending a wedding. And then the lower right is with my host brothers and dad at a soccer game. And then there's also some photos of my students, of course. And so here's some information on TEFL. Now, this is something that I recommend. I did not get a TEFL certification before I went to Georgia, but I actually wish that I had. There just really wasn't a lot of time for me to get the certification because I ended up, it was a brand new program. I ended up applying for it and leaving just a couple weeks later. But a TEFL certificate it's something that's not always required for teaching English abroad jobs. But I would just recommend it. It's good to have, and it's really easy to do online. And actually, InterExchange offers a discount. We work with the International TEFL Academy, so if you're interested in pursuing a TEFL certification, you can visit that website listed there. And then here's some of my advice on how to prepare for a teaching abroad experience. So no matter where you live, there's probably English learners in your community, and there can be paid or volunteer positions available. Teaching online is another great way to get some experience, and there have there's kind of been an explosion of opportunities, especially in the past year during COVID. And this will probably likely be more of a one-on-one experience rather than a group class, but it's just a good way to get some experience. Also familiarize yourself with British English. So the textbooks that I was working with in Georgia, and of course this may depend on the country, but they were in they did teach and instruct British English, so it's just kind of good to know, how they spell things differently, how they pronounce things differently. It might be just helpful to know that. And then, of course, studying the language and culture of the host family is really important as well. Even if you just know the basics of the language. I just know from my experience in Georgia, if you were just to say one word, they were just overjoyed because so few people know their language and really take the time to study it and learn different words and phrases. It's a very difficult language in terms of pronunciation. And like I mentioned, they have their own alphabet. So if you just make a little bit of effort, they really appreciate it. And read blogs of other teachers. So no matter what country, there's probably been an English teacher there in the past, and teachers love to blog. So you can probably find a blog of someone who has taught in whichever country in the past, and they usually have some great advice and some good information. Okay, so finding different opportunities. So one way that you can find English teaching positions abroad is through government programs. So the program that I did was through the Ministry of Education, TLG. I also listed EPIC there. So that is a program that one of my colleagues at InterExchange did in Korea. So there's that option as well. Natalie and I were talking before this presentation about a program in France that they had to offer. So lots of government opportunities. And then there's the Fulbright English Teaching Assistant Awards. I would say these are pretty competitive. There's a limited number of awards per country. I ended up applying for one in Austria, like right after college, before I went to Georgia, and then my colleague applied for one as well. We didn't get the awards, but as I know someone that did, and they are pretty competitive, but definitely worth looking into, depending on which country you're interested in. And then TEFL job board. So if you do get the TEFL certificate, there are plenty of job boards online that are open to people that have that certificate. And then here's just three pretty popular websites for searching various teaching positions abroad: ESL Cafe, Teachaway, and Go Overseas. All right, so now I just want to cover InterExchange a little bit and the different teaching abroad options that we offer. So InterExchange is a nonprofit based in New York City, and since 1968, we have been operating different cultural exchange programs all over the world. And so these are the different teaching programs that we offer right now for US citizens age 18 and up. They're all short term, so they don't require a long commitment at all. And so I want to start off with our language homestay program, which we offer in France, Italy, and Spain. In this program, you will live with a carefully screened host family for 4 to 12 weeks. You choose the length of your program. In exchange for tutoring your host siblings in English, your host family will provide a private bedroom and meals. The tutoring commitment is only 15 hours per week, so you have a ton of free time. You'll have a chance to connect with a potential family before you leave the US to learn about what they're looking for in a tutor. And then we have our summer English camp in Italy. In this program, you'll volunteer as a camp counselor, helping children aged 6 to 14 with their conversational English through fun games and activities. This camp is located in the Le Marche region of Italy, which is a beautiful region on the east coast of the country. Camp runs Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 1, so you have afternoons and weekends free. You'll receive accommodation for the duration of your program, either a shared apartment with other counselors or with a host family. Lunch is provided during the camp week, and if you're living with a host family, they will also provide all meals for you. We offer 3 sessions every summer. The 2021 dates are currently tentative, but the first 2 sessions always begin in June and then the last one in early July. We have our application deadline coming up March 31st, and we will find out very soon if the camp is definitely going ahead this summer because it wasn't able to operate in 2020. All right, finally, we have our Costa Rica teaching opportunity where in this program, you may teach in a school or a community center. There is homestay accommodation and plenty of support from our local partner there. And you will choose between the city of San Jose or Manuel Antonio. So you can kind of choose between city or beach, and you can stay a few weeks in one location and then travel to the other to experience both. And we do recommend at least 3 weeks for this program that you can start at any time of year. And then of course you also have an option to add some daily Spanish lessons on this program. All right, so to learn any more about each of these programs, you can visit interexchange.org. All applications are free, so please visit our website to just learn a little bit more about the Teach English programs or any of our other programs. And then we have our own webinar series. So I just wanted to point out our spring webinar series especially on May 12th, we are doing a Teach English info session. So if any of our programs interest you, definitely check out our events page on our website to register for one of these webinars. And then I'll just share my contact information. So I'm happy to talk with any of you about InterExchange programs, about Georgia, or just teaching English abroad in general. And I guess with that, I will throw it back to Natalie.
Yeah, well, awesome. Well, thank you so much. I have a couple of questions, obviously, to discuss with you about your experience and teaching English in general. But then, of course, I recommend to the audience, for those who are joining us, you're welcome to send your questions in the chat, or if you at this time would like to go ahead and turn your cameras on and engage kind of face to face, you are obviously welcome to do that, and feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question for Stephanie. So Stephanie, I guess with that, if you want to go ahead and maybe we can stop screen sharing for now, and we can have more of a conversation, and then we can bring it up towards the end. There we go, perfect. That way you can see everyone else too, in case there's faces here. But I guess I'll go ahead and start. So could you elaborate, because I know we had a few people who joined a little bit late, which program you chose when you taught abroad and why you chose that particular program?
Yes, that can be a very long story, so I'll give you kind of an abbreviated version. But why I chose Georgia, I was actually very interested in Argentina. I had really wanted to study Spanish initially, so this is right after I graduated college. I was working retail and doing an internship, and the job market at that time was pretty difficult. So really all that I wanted, I was an international relations major. All that I wanted to do was go abroad again, and teaching English seemed like the best way to do it at that time. So I had always wanted to go to South America, was looking into programs in Argentina, but I was kind of broke at the time. So jobs, just looking at some of the positions there, a lot of them required TEFL certification, and then I wouldn't have as much assistance, maybe searching for jobs and then kind of finding my own housing. So I think I just wanted a program that was just easier and more structured, especially going to a country for the first time. So like I said, I was interning for an organization like where I work now. It's like InterExchange, but it's based in Chicago, and they were actually partnering with the Georgian government on this new program. So they were recruiting volunteers for the program. That's how I found out about it. One day going into work, I just saw like a poster for it, and I just looked into it, and they were paying for my flight to go to Georgia, which is not, it's not a cheap flight. It's halfway across the world. And they also paid to send volunteers home for Christmas. So not only did I get my initial flight there, I got sent home for a month for Christmas, which was really nice. And then I didn't have to pay for housing because the program is all based on host family accommodation. So I also received a small stipend every month, and it's very small. But Georgia, it's very cheap to live in Georgia, and so it really did cover all of my expenses. So I kind of was just like weighing Georgia and Argentina, and like I'm sure I like I said, I also applied for Austria. That's where I had studied abroad, so I was kind of interested in going back there. But just kind of looking into the cost of everything, I think that's why I eventually settled on Georgia.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the paid flights is a definitely a nice perk. Are they? Do you happen to know if the Georgia program is still doing that particular incentive?
I do need to find that out. So I still have a contact there who is the head of the program. She's been head of the program for a few years, and she was my co-teacher in the school where I was initially teaching in Georgia. So I could definitely find out that information, because yeah, I mean, I think that makes the program very, very attractive to people.
Yeah. So you were trying to decide between Argentina and Georgia. Obviously, there's different languages involved in those two countries. So I guess what was your language level when you were going to Georgia, and how did that impact your experience? And what advice would you give about being fluent, or things like that in a language for those who?
Yeah. So my language knowledge was zero. Yeah. So I wish that I had had more time before traveling to really study the language. There's definitely not as many resources if you want to study Georgian than if you want to study Spanish. So I just thought, okay, if I'm going to South America, I will just like really like dive in and try to do like a crash course in Spanish. I had studied German in high school and college, so I really wanted to learn Spanish. But because there was such a short time from when I applied to this new program, it was just a couple of weeks, and I was just trying to, pack up my life and get ready to move. We did have like an orientation where we just did some teaching training, and they kind of gave us a short Georgian language course. So I learned a little bit there, and then like through my host family eventually. And I had a semester of college Russian that helped a little bit, just because like most people speak Russian in Georgia. But yeah, I would say I made most of my effort once I was in country, learning the language. But that's not what I advise. I think that if you have the time, like definitely look into the language before you go and start improving.
Yeah. I think something to note too for anyone who's interested, it is easier when you know a language, but it's not necessarily required for some programs, or at least not at the fluent native level. So don't be too intimidated, I guess, about applying for a program, even if you're not familiar with the language. So I guess what would be, actually, I'm going to go ahead and pause for a second. If any of our guests here have a question that they would like to ask, you're welcome to do so. Feel free to unmute yourself or use the chat.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I just applied to that program in Austria, the ETA with the government. So I don't find out till like next month. But I'm just really curious, what were your experiences when you applied? Because I've taught English abroad already. I withhold a TEFL certificate. I'm actually a full-time teacher as an undergrad. A bunch of I've been in education. My internship was education. So I was just curious, what were your your experiences when you applied? Because I'm getting kind of nervous that I may keep on getting rejected from jobs in Europe, like in Denmark and Sweden with teaching, because I don't hold a Cambridge certificate or an education degree, because I'm also international relations. But I was just really curious how you applied and what your experiences were, because I'm getting nervous.
No, don't be nervous. I already feel like your application stands out more than mine did, just because you have the teaching experience. And at the end of the day, sometimes you just don't really know what they're looking for, because actually someone who I had studied abroad with, and we kind of had similar background, similar experience. He did get that award in Austria, and so it's kind of hard to know like why I wasn't selected, but yeah, like I said, it is a very competitive award because I've known a lot of people that have applied for it. So like, don't be discouraged by not getting the Fulbright award. It is, there's very limited positions depending on the country. I mean, some only have like 2 awards, others might have like 30. So I'm not sure how many Austria has now or when I applied, but I mean, there's very limited spots, but I think that you've set yourself up perfectly to be a great candidate. It was like I applied for it like 10 years ago, so I wish I remembered more of the process, but it is also frustrating because those applications can be very detailed. You spend a lot of time on them, whereas like some other positions might not require so much, like in terms of, you need to collect recommendations and everything. So I don't know. I hope that addressed your question.
Yeah, sorry, I'm in a car right now, so I kind of lost you a little bit, but I was just really curious, only because like I'm waiting. That's still my like last answer, because then I'm gonna start applying to more programs, like probably InterExchange, because I've studied abroad in France before, and that's where I taught English.
Okay.
But it's been a while since I spoke French, and I was gonna apply to the Ministry of Education one there, but they like asked me to write a paragraph like all in French, and I was like, this is not happening because it's been like 2 years.
Well, and I know that, well, I don't know if Natalie can speak to, because she has some experience applying to the French program, so she might be able to speak to that one a little bit. Just I don't have any France experience.
Yeah, thank you so much for your questions. Definitely, it's something too, if you missed Stephanie's response to your answer, this program is recorded, so you're welcome to come back and take a look at it, because she did offer some advice about the Austria kind of waiting situation. But yeah, the Fulbrights are a little difficult just because they are very competitive. It sounds like you're a great candidate. With the French program, I think the French government program might have already passed the deadline for this year. But I would definitely keep applying and like look at InterExchange's website, and there's always other opportunities to
No, I'm on a webinar.
So well, you kind of touched on a question I'd like to ask Stephanie, which is about education and having experience teaching abroad or teaching domestically. Stephanie, could you share a bit with our guests about whether or not that's always a requirement for every program? Do you have to be an education major? Do you have to be a teacher to teach abroad?
Definitely not. And and for the InterExchange programs, it's great to have teaching experience, but we have a lot of short-term programs that and some are informal. I mean, you're just teaching in the home or you're teaching in a summer camp. So as long as you're a fluent English speaker, you're and you like working with children, you're good to go. So I did not have any really formal teaching experience before Georgia. At the time, they required an associate's degree, that you were a native English speaker. So most people were coming from the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, UK. And I'm not sure if they have added more requirements since then. But for this program, it was pretty simple to apply. My only experience prior to that was when I studied abroad in Austria. I had tutored 2 young children who were trying to learn English. So I definitely had no classroom experience or group experience. So, but really my advice with that is just because it can be kind of intimidating getting in front of a group for the first time. It's very different than doing something one-on-one. So especially if you don't love like public speaking, it can take just like some time getting used to, but like as long as you're flexible and able to adapt to kind of the the position that is required of you. So like I said, I was working with a co-teacher, so that was really important because especially for younger levels that didn't have enough of a foundation in English, it was definitely like crucial to have a co-teacher. So I think just as long as you, even if you don't have teaching experience, like I said, the TEFL is great to have. A lot of positions require that, and it can make you just more confident in your English teaching skills. But yeah, as long as you're kind of open to where they need you and what type of role they would like you to have, whether it's in their school or in their local institution. Yeah, that's what's good to be, is flexible.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, for anyone who has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask, or also use the chat function if you're more comfortable that way. But I guess I will ask another question, Stephanie. What would people be surprised about teaching English abroad? You know, what was that experience? What about your experience may someone not expect?
So it was just, I thought it was going to be way easier than it was. And I think it depends on the country and like kind of the classroom that you're going to be in. But just for me, I had grown up going to Catholic school my whole life. I was used to kind of just a strict learning environment. And so I think if you haven't taught before and you don't have like the classroom management skills that like someone with a little bit of teaching experience would have, that was like kind of the biggest challenge for me. I'm just like, oh, I speak English, I can teach English, like I'll be fine. But no, it's much more complicated than that. And in my classrooms, what was really difficult was that like not everyone was the same level. I mostly taught grades 5 through 8, and I would have some students in the class that were pretty much fluent in English, and others that, you know, had really struggled. So it was trying to teach to very different levels was one of the hardest things. And also like their teacher-student relationship in Georgia was different than anything that I had experienced. Like for me growing up, and maybe this is everyone else's experience in the United States, like my teachers were authority figures. And in Georgia, it really is more of a friendship between student and teacher. It's like more casual, and so that was weird too. Like, you know, my students want to be like Facebook friends with me, but like, it's hard to find that balance, I think, too, is like, what is the right relationship to have with your students? Yeah.
I think that's really fascinating. I want to give our guests a chance, if anyone has a question they'd like to ask Stephanie, with maybe unmuting your mic or through the chat.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Well, first, I want to say thank you for your time. I am so grateful and appreciative for this, because this is really something that I'm interested in. So there's like this burning in my heart. So I'm so grateful for your time and you sharing your experience, and this being free. I really do appreciate it. And even though this is recorded, which I am grateful, so I can go back, is it possible for you to share your PowerPoint just so that I can go back on my own and take my time and looking up things?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And my other question was, now with COVID, specifically with the homestay, the opportunity for homestay teaching English, like I know that's something I would love to do. So is that something that, is there still a need and a desire for that with COVID, or do they just have certain steps that you have to take in order for that to be a possibility?
Right. So kind of where we stand right now with the majority of our programs, they have been paused for really a year, since March of last year. We are running a few programs. We do au pair programs as well, in addition to teaching English and some other types. So our Au Pair Netherlands program is one that is running, and also the Costa Rica program that I mentioned, that one is running as well, and our Spanish immersion programs there. So there's a couple countries where we have programs that it is possible to travel to. You would just need to get a negative COVID test before travel. But in terms of Europe, the Italy camp program, we are waiting to see if that's going to happen. We should know within the next couple of weeks. But it really depends on the situation in Europe. We were really hopeful for this summer because that's a really popular time for people to do our programs, especially our short-term programs. And we have some programs in Australia and New Zealand as well. And it's kind of our prediction that Europe will open up a little bit sooner than Australia and New Zealand, just because those two countries have had a super strict lockdown. So, but yeah, right now we're kind of just waiting for borders to open up. So what you can do is apply. So applications are free to all of our programs. We have accepted applications during the entire pandemic. We just might not be able to move you forward so if you're looking into the language homestay program, we might not be able to move you forward into the matching process with a family, but you're definitely welcome to apply. There's no obligation with that. And yeah, depending on when you'd like to travel, we'll move you forward as soon as we can.
And how long is the short program?
So for language homestay, you can choose between 4 and 12 weeks. So it's really a maximum of 3 months and a minimum of 4 weeks. Yeah, so you can choose any duration based on your availability. You can start at any time of the year. So you can do it in summer, you could do it in fall, winter. It's a very flexible program that you design the duration yourself.
I will add to what Stephanie has said. Besides InterExchange, I know that there are a number of, and she mentioned in her PowerPoint, other ways you can go abroad and teach abroad. Au pairing is one, and that's something that's quite popular, as I understand, in Europe. And there are different websites online where you can find au pair jobs and things like that, and connect directly with families if you're looking to be in a home. There's also a number of government programs, facilitated programs, which, as far as I'm aware, the application process for like this coming academic year has remained the same. So they are planning on doing those. So definitely just keep applying, and even for the Peace Corps, for example, and there's an education component to the Peace Corps. They might have halted sending people out, but the applications are all still ready to go. So as soon as they open back up again, they'll be willing to send people out. So definitely keep applying and doing those things as the opportunities open back up again. Mm-hmm. But thank you for your question. That was a good question.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So for those who don't have a teaching degree or any experience, how do the programs like support us or give us guidance in order to like teach effectively?
Mm-hmm. So when I had arrived in Georgia, we had a week-long orientation. So during that week, we were studying the Georgian language, and then outside of that, we were doing teacher training. So I mean, a week, it's not a lot of time. That's why I would recommend the TEFL certificate. If you have time to do that, you can do it online in a matter of weeks, a couple of months, just depending on how much time you have. So and my colleague who did the teaching program in Korea, she did do the TEFL, and she was, when I was talking to her about this presentation today, she said she was really glad that she did that. So if you're, at all nervous about not having teaching experience, I would definitely look into TEFL. It will make you feel like more confident going into the classroom.
Okay, thank you.
That's a great question. And I think too, something Stephanie mentioned, and that some programs offer different support as opposed to others, so I have a feeling that InterExchange's training and prep might be a little bit different from a government sponsored program, things like that. So it really, I think that comes down to which programs you're interested in, and maybe that will help you decide between some of them, depending on the level of support. Because I think it does differ, if I'm correct, right, Stephanie, kind of between different types of programs, right?
Right. Yeah. And InterExchange, for our short-term programs, we do provide like ESL activities and resources. But when I was in Georgia and just lesson planning, I just relied on the internet a lot because there's a lot of websites with just English learning activities that are great for kids. So just different handouts too, which that kind of became an issue because I didn't always have access to a printer. But yeah, you can get ideas from online when you're lesson planning, because like I said, we had the textbook, but you definitely want to go beyond that. So I kind of the way that I approached it was my co-teachers kind of like taught with the textbook, and then I just introduced like everything else. So yeah, just fun games and activities. We played Simon Says a lot. That like was really fun for fifth graders, and it just like really helps with listening skills. But yeah, any games that you can think of that you played growing up can actually like be really effective in like in teaching English abroad.
We have a great question in the chat from Sue Ann about, she has teaching experience and she's semi-retired. She's taught a lot online, but is considering trying to apply for a face-to-face program. So the question is, is one's age a factor in some of these programs? And, feel free to talk about maybe InterExchange or your experience in Georgia or things like that. And I can chime in with something I know as well.
Yeah, so with Georgia, there was no age max. So we really had people coming from like maybe age 20 all the way up to like 60, 70. So we had like a pretty big range there. And yeah, I would say, sorry, I like got distracted by my doorbell. And with InterExchange programs, our Costa Rica program has no age cap. And then I should mention, the Homestay is 18 to 35. A lot of families usually do want younger volunteers for the Homestay program. And then the camp program is for age 20 to 35. But there's like a little bit of flexibility with that. So if you're late 30s and you want to apply, it's not like a very strict cap, but that's kind of what host families tend to want. And yeah, and I know Peace Corps is, that's another example of there's no really age cap there, or it's very, very high, as I know. So I just think it really depends on the program, but I don't know, what did you have thoughts on that, Natalie?
Yeah, and really just seconding what Stephanie said, I think it does depend a lot on the program, so it just requiring some research. But I will say, I know for the French program, the government-sponsored program in France, the Teaching English Assistantship program, I do believe there's a cap at about 35. So that's something just to be aware of. But like I said, or like Stephanie said, the Peace Corps program is open, I think, to almost everyone. I think that there are other programs. It just means you'll have to kind of make sure to check that box, or sort of, when you're looking and applying and trying to decide.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, but maybe some of the teaching websites that I share, maybe you might be able to filter based on your, just based on your demographic. We used to, up until last year, we used to offer a Thailand program that was a longer term program, and that one I believe had an age cap of 64, if I remember correctly. So yeah, there's that as well.
So we've talked a lot about kind of teaching and things like that, but I would love for you to reflect on your experience outside the classroom. So kind of what you might have spent your free time doing in Georgia, or what people who do InterExchange programs spend their free time doing.
Yeah, so I in Georgia, it's a small country, so it's easy to see a lot of it or most of it in a year. So I spent the school year in Tbilisi, which is the capital city. And then I actually spent this summer. So once school ended, I went to Batumi, which is a city on the west, on the Black Sea. I think it's the third largest city in Georgia. So I got to kind of experience two different cities. But my host family took me to see a lot in the country. So we would go on day trips to the mountains. It's in the Caucasus Mountains, so that's it's a beautiful place to be, and you kind of get a mix of everything in Georgia, because you have the beach, you have the mountains, you have wine country, which is really fun to visit too. So yeah, I did a lot of traveling, either with my host family or with other teachers that were there doing the program, and yeah, it did allow for plenty of free time, even though you were in school Monday through Friday. You definitely had weekends free, and then with our program, so like I was mentioning, the language homestay, that was only 15 hours per week. So I mean, that's the maximum commitment. So that one gives you tons of free time to explore the city that you're in. So if you're in Spain, you're going to be in or near Madrid. If you do the France program, you'd probably be placed in or near Paris. And then, like I mentioned, in Italy, all of our placements are in that La Marche region on the East Coast. So yeah, people do travel a lot on the weekends, or they might take a language class in their free time, because a lot of people that go to Spain and France, they've had some language study, and they want to just pursue that a little bit more while they're there. So yeah, that's just a great program if you really want to see a lot of that country, just because there is so much free time.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess and you've offered some great advice so far, but what would you recommend someone interested in teaching English abroad do right now to make themselves a better candidate?
Yeah, so like I had mentioned, the TEFL is really great, and then just being a very flexible person that is open to just like different types of teaching environments. So I was teaching kids, but then I also, when I moved to Batumi, I was teaching adults. I was teaching police officers. So kind of just being open to kind of a wide range of different positions. And yeah, like I had thinking back to like the slide that I had on this, also like familiarizing yourself with British English is really great too, and just like, yeah, starting to get some experience online, especially since we're very limited with travel right now, and in your local community. So there's plenty of people who are trying to improve their English in the United States. So even if it's just something volunteer, it might be just one day a week, or if someone needs a conversation partner, that's all experience that you can use for an application for teaching abroad. So I think, yeah, now's a good time to take advantage. Maybe you have just some extra time during COVID. So whether that's online or in a local class, if those are going on right now, I would say that's good experience to build. And it also like allows you to, if you have no teaching experience, make sure you like it. I mean, you could just go into your first teaching experience and be like, well, this isn't really for me. So, and you don't want that to happen when you're already abroad, right? So you get all the way there and you're like, I don't know if I really like this. So yeah, I would just play around with it in the US before you leave, and try to get some experience now.
Yeah, that's great advice. And for those of you who are located in the Kansas City area, there are a number of organizations who do work with English language learners and things like that. So who are always looking for volunteers. In particular, I can name just off the top of my head 2 IRC member organizations. JBS does, I think, language lessons with refugee populations in the community and immigrant populations, and so does the Kansas City Public Library RISE program that works with refugees and immigrants. So yeah, there's plenty of opportunities to volunteer and get involved in the greater Kansas City area. If you're interested in more information, I'd be happy to share it with you. So feel free to contact me after the program. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask Stephanie? Go ahead. Yes.
I'd like to address too, if anyone's interested in this. I intern with Global FC, and they work with GBS, and I've taught English with them this summer too. Like I was tutoring a bunch of the refugee population, and they offer like a lot of volunteer work stuff too, and it kind of gets you an inside scoop of what I would like. So if you guys are interested, it's Global FC. Mm-hmm. You can say that Montana sent you, because I used to intern the education aspect of that. So
great.
Yeah. That's great. I think that churches also do this, offer ESL quite regularly. I think that when I was in, I remember volunteering somewhere. I lived in DC briefly, and I was volunteering with recent immigrants from Latin America, and I think that ESL was offered through a church, and it was like free for them to attend those classes.
Yeah. Karen, did you have a question?
I just wanted to say I'm so glad that you said that, because I literally, I'm going to reach out to the campus dean to see if I could shadow or volunteer in the ELL classes. So I'm so glad that you said that. I said that should give me, let me see how I really like it and just give me that classroom experience. And I think the more the better. And the volunteering with conversations, that's how this interest started for me. When last year I was scheduled to graduate, my last semester, my internship, everything shut down because of COVID. I was like, I need some suggestions on what to do to earn hours. One of the instructors at my college, we went to Spain together. She said, Karen, would you like to work with some of my students and allow them to help practice their English? So I'm on the phone reading books, we're online, and that's how all this started for me. So that is so true.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a ton of opportunities wherever you're based to get involved with English language education and programs like that, and they're great for, I speak not just for myself, but it's great for you and building that experience, but also for someone else as well. So it feels good to do. Stephanie, what knowledge, skills, and abilities, I guess, would you say you really developed as a result of being there, right? So now that it's been a while since you were in Georgia, and since you were teaching English abroad, why would you recommend someone do it? How did it help you move forward in your career?
Yeah, so I think that an experience like this it's kind of just like a very unique thing to have on your resume. So when I returned to the United States, so as I said, I was an international relations major, and so I was always interested in jobs that had a global component to it. So ever since then, so I've worked in with cultural exchange programs since then, but I've also done some account management and worked with some global clients. So I feel like building the cross-cultural skills that I did in Georgia really helps me deal with people from all over the world on a daily basis. And actually, at one of my previous companies, I was asked to kind of head up our cultural committee and kind of educate staff on how best to best practices for cross-cultural communication, because we were kind of all having communication with clients from all over the world, and just reminding people that, like, okay, we don't all, just very simple things like we don't all write the date the same way, and so like how to just like craft professional emails to someone in this country, or that it might take them a little bit more, it might take you more time to build a relationship with someone from this country based on their culture. So yeah, I would say definitely the cross-cultural skill, and gaining one of my first professional experiences with like coworkers from another country. So yeah, I think that since then, having that on my resume, it just kind of has stood out to employers during the interview process. A lot of people have not been to Georgia, so especially if you go and teach in a very unique country that not a lot of people have been to, they just look at that and are like, okay, great, tell me about that. So yeah, I think that an experience like this definitely will help your resume stand out.
Absolutely. And I think Montana mentioned that she had already been abroad teaching English in France. Probably could second that that advice. But great. I did see a chat question about typing different opportunities locally in those resources in the chat. So I did drop a few links in the chat in case you're interested in finding out some of those IRC local opportunities. But again, just Googling, what you're interested in, right? Whether you want to work with youth or older learners or whatever, there's definitely opportunities to make you a better candidate. So Stephanie, and again, if anyone has any other questions that are specific, feel free to jump in with them via the chat or unmute yourself. But I guess do you have an anecdote or memory from inside the classroom that you'd like to share with our group?
Yeah, so well, I kind of have two that come to mind. This isn't really an anecdote, but one just like to give, if you end up teaching abroad and you have a class, this is just an idea that I had, and it's one of the activities that I did that I'm kind of most proud of during my year there. And so I established a pen pal program with my school that I had gone to, my K through 8 school in the US, and then my seventh and eighth graders in Georgia, which was kind of difficult because like the postal system there is like kind of tricky, but we managed to get a few letters back and forth. But something like that, because I just think is really helpful, not only to like your students that you're teaching, but even students in the United States who like they probably knew nothing about Georgia before they had a pen pal there. So I don't know. That's just like that was one of the ideas that I had, and that I hope that kind of left a lasting impression with my students. I hope they're still maybe in contact with some of them. The other anecdote is so I was teaching at one of the schools so the president of Georgia, who had started this program, he had been to this school as a boy, and I ended up I ended up being chosen for some national commercials for the program because I don't know, they just because of the school that I was in. So I was kind of used to promote the program, which was really fun. I mean, I don't like love being on camera, but I don't know, it was fun to film and everything. And then he actually visited the school during my first semester just to like kind of get publicity for the program. So there was like a lot of news crew there. And it was like very staged, but I had to be in a first grade classroom teaching them their ABCs, and I like wasn't even teaching first grade at the time. So that was kind of funny. And I, you know, at least I got to meet the president of Georgia, which was cool. So yeah, that was an interesting day.
That's awesome. That's really cool. We do have, I think Bo has a question for you about your language acquisition process.
Yeah. Hi, Stephanie. Thanks again so much for your time and for sharing your expertise in this. I'm really curious about your process of language acquisition in country. So versus like Spanish or French, you know, as people in the United States, there are a lot of opportunities in person and digitally for, you know, kind of getting a handle on those languages, at least basically before you go. But for Georgian, which obviously is a language that you don't really have as many resources for, like what was your path to fluency or language acquisition like when you got into the country?
So unfortunately, I'm not fluent in Georgian, but I'm conversational, and it's not something that I use too much when I'm outside of Georgia. Unfortunately, I would love to still improve it, but yeah, like you said, not a ton of resources for Georgian learners. So and my host family, 3/4 of them spoke English. So my host brothers who were like 13 and 14 at the time, they were already like very advanced in English. And then my host dad was like really trying to get, so he was at a lower level, but like he really, really tried with me. And then my host mom didn't speak any Georgian. So I would say I learned Georgian mostly from my host mom. I mean, we had to find a way to communicate. You end up using your hands a lot and just, you know, whatever. But I also, like, one of my co-teachers in my school, which I found out that a lot of other teachers were able to do this as well. They kind of after school would do just like a little tutoring session. So I got a textbook at some bookstore in Tbilisi, and I had asked one of my co-teachers to kind of tutor me. And with a language like Georgian, something like YouTube can be really helpful. So there are, you know, if you have trouble like finding resources, because there's a ton of language learning websites, but for more obscure languages, I would say YouTube is great, and you can connect one-on-one. You can always connect one-on-one with a tutor. Based in Georgia, whether there's a lot of tutors based in Russia as well that speak Georgian. So I think that if you're looking into a country and you want to start like getting some language knowledge before then. I would say probably, since you won't be able to find maybe a class, an individual tutor that will meet with you before you go would be my advice on that. Are you looking at one language in particular, or?
No, not particularly. I was just more so curious about like the practical aspect of learning once you're in country. And thank you for pointing out, online resources and one-on-one tutoring opportunities. But like, how challenging was it for you that first several months that you were not familiar with the language at all? Was that like very difficult for you?
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, it's a foreign language, but it's like a really foreign language, because you can't even, until you know the alphabet, you can't even read anything. And I remember I had a situation where I was on the bus one time, and I completely took the wrong bus, and I was lost, and I didn't know what neighborhood I was in. And Georgian people, just as a whole, super friendly, super helpful, just as a culture. And I got off this bus, and I just like had my cell phone, and I called my host brother, and I was just like, I don't know where I'm at. And I just said, excuse me, to someone. And this actually happened more than once. I just hand them my cell phone, and like my host family starts speaking Georgian to them. And yeah, so that had to happen a couple of times. Yeah, but as soon as you learn the alphabet, like it gets easier. And really just knowing like a few, and I was like very basic conversational in my first couple of months there, but just knowing just a few phrases, knowing numbers, knowing just thank you, and like being able to ask for something. And so that was 10 years ago, and I do go back and visit Georgia often. So it won't be the situation in every country that like English speaking is so limited, because I would say it was more so in 2010, but now the level of English in Georgia it's exploded. Like it's just night and day. Like it's so common now, especially, I mean, among the younger generation, of course, but yeah, I don't have any too many like horror stories of like, oh my gosh, like I didn't speak Georgian and I just like didn't know what to do. So I mean, they're, like I said, they're helpful people. They will do their best to help you out with whatever situation you're in. So but yeah, it's definitely, it's harder in countries like that compared with Spain, where you might have to, every other person you ask might know English, whereas in Georgia, like, oh, every like sixth person you ask might be able to help you. So yeah.
Well, I want to be mindful of your time, and I know we're coming up on 1:00 Central. So Stephanie, before I close this out, do you have any final thoughts or things you'd like to share about teaching English abroad with our group? Or, if you want to remind everyone to check out InterExchange or your contact information, feel free.
Yeah, and thank you everyone for your questions and being so engaged today. I'm not sure if everyone had the chance to see my slide with my contact info, but Natalie, I will share the slides with you. So I don't know if you can share with attendees, but I'd be happy to just keep the conversation going and talk further about whether that's InterExchange programs or just teaching abroad in general. I love talking about this. I'm so happy I did it. It really was like one of the best experiences of my life. So I hope that you guys have the opportunity to do the same. And yeah, I'm happy to be a resource for all of you.
Yeah, well, thank you again so much for being here. I want to thank you for donating your time and providing so much interesting information, but I also would like to thank everyone for being here and taking time out of their day to be such great listeners and have such great questions. I would like to close by putting in a plug for some of our upcoming programs. I also, again, Stephanie mentioned that InterExchange has some webinars coming up. So if you want more information about InterExchange's programs, definitely check out the InterExchange website. But next week at the IRC, we are doing another international career series on Friday about living and working abroad. This is the last program for our living and working abroad series, and it's actually going to be about living and working abroad in the United States from a non-citizen, what their experience has been like living and adapting to the US. And then 2 weeks from now, we have a global experience about Mexican cooking. It's a Mexican cooking class. So if you're interested in learning about cooking a Mexican dish, and then we have an international film club on an Icelandic film, and Breathe Normally is the title. So we have a lot coming up. Feel free to check out our website if you're interested in any of those programs, or if you're interested in finding more information about this program and upcoming Teaching English Abroad programs. So you'll also be able to find a link for our Facebook and our YouTube on our website. So for those of you who are looking for the recording of this program, you'll be able to find them there. Thank you again, Stephanie, so much for being here. I hope everyone enjoyed it, and we can enjoy the rest of our weekends. Thank you, everybody.